So speaking of virtue signaling, it seems like all of these pop stars now are coming out and saying that they want their children to be screwed up for life. Like it's their actual goal in life to screw up their kids. So pop superstar Pink has 2 kids. Willow, who's her 6-year-old daughter, and Jameson, her 11-month-old son, who's named after some sort of alcohol, I guess. She has big dreams for them, but they don't subscribe to the idea that Willow is a girl and Jameson is a boy. Pink said, quote, "I was in a school, and the bathroom outside the kindergarten said gender neutral, anybody, and it was a drawing of many shapes. I took a picture of it and I wrote progress. I thought that was awesome. I love that kids are having this conversation. Yes, there's nothing better for small children than being confused as to whether they're a boy or a girl, and they can switch randomly and arbitrarily between them. That's not linked with higher suicide attempt rates. It's not linked with depression. It's not linked with any of that stuff. Gender confusion is really good for kids. It's fantastic for kids. If you're insane, part of what your job is to do as parents is to look at what your kids are and then attempt to make their life easier by having them develop in psychologically healthy ways. You know, the same people who will say that we need to teach men not to rape and that men inherently have a tendency toward rape will say that manhood doesn't even exist and a man can be a woman. It's an insane proposition. Okay, the whole point is that if you want men to be good, you have to acknowledge the nature of men, and then you have to teach men to be gentlemen. That comes along with a positive masculinity. The same thing is true among women. There is such a thing as positive femininity. Okay, there's such a thing as toxic femininity too, I think, if we're going to talk about toxicity. Toxic just meaning bad behavior among men or bad behavior among women. To suggest that all women are angels and all men are devils is not the case. Okay, the whole point of civilizing your children is to bring them up to be the best man or woman they can be. If they suffer from gender confusion issues, that's something you have to deal with. But to impose gender confusion on your child because you're so progressive is just pathetic and sick. Pink is enthused that Willow told her she wants to marry an African woman when she grows up. Her kid is 6. Her kid is 6. She's enthused about that? Like, her kid doesn't even know what she's talking about. Like, her kid doesn't even have sexual hormones running through her at this point. And you're already talking like, oh yeah, that's good. If you want to be a lesbian, just go for it. She's a 6-year-old. What the hell's wrong with you? So we are a very labelless household. Last week, Willow told me she's going to marry an African woman. Why not an Asian woman? Is her 6-year-old a racist? And I was like, great, can you teach me how to make African food? And she's like, sure, Mama. And we are going to live with you while our house is getting ready. I was like, what the F? Who are you? Who is paying for this, by the way? And she said, this is just great. And it is worth noting, as Hank Berrien does over at Daily Wire, that after spending her prepubescent years using ecstasy crystal meth and acid, she came close to overdosing this Pink in a club when she was 15. She apparently thinks she was screwed up then, but she's much better now, saying, I went off the rails before all of this. I got my bleep out of the way early before anyone knew who I was. Well, why weren't you just exploring your boundaries? Why was that a problem? Why couldn't you just be who you want to be? You want to do crystal meth when you're 15? That's fine. And if you want to be a boy when you're a girl at 3, what's the problem? Self-definition. Subjectivism. That's the ticket. And now she says, I'm much more mom than I am anything else. Absolutely 100%. I feel bad for her kids, honestly. Kids want lines. Kids want rules. Kids want structures. Kids want to know that there's predictability in the universe. Parents who fail to recognize this bring up bad children. And children, even if they're not bad, who are troubled and have difficulty. Children are looking for lines. They are unformed by civilization. It's why we form civilizations, to make better human beings. But the left doesn't believe that. They believe that you should be able to do whatever you want. In terms of children. Like, children should be able to do whatever they want. We don't have any role in cultivating them. And then they're surprised when uncultivated human beings end up doing bad things when they grow up, or end up being troubled when they grow up. Okay, time for a little bit of Bible. So this week I felt that it was useful to go through the actual portion of Genesis where Jerusalem is first referenced according to Jewish tradition. This, of course, is the section in Genesis talking about Jacob's dream. So Jacob leaves Beersheba. This is in Genesis 28, 10 through 22. Jacob left Beersheba, and he set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. He took out one of the stones there, and he put it under his head, and he lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of the Lord were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord thy God, the Father of the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac, your forefathers. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are standing. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All the peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. God wasn't lying. For 3,000 years, the Jewish people wanted to go back to the land. For 3,000 years, the Jewish religion was inextricably intertwined with the very place where Jacob was laying his head. For 3,000 years, the Jewish people have had the same dream as Jacob, that there would be a footstool for God in Jerusalem, and the Jewish people would be able to live there in peace. That's all the Jews have ever wanted. Thank you to President Trump for bringing that reality closer to fruition and for acknowledging the reality that already exists. Jacob awoke from his sleep. He said, surely the Lord is in this place. I was not aware of it. And he was afraid, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. No one cares about Jerusalem except for the Jews, and that is why Jewish sovereignty over Jerusalem is important. It's also the same Jews that brought forth the basis of Western civilization. And we would not have the civilization we have without those words in the book of Genesis, and it's great to acknowledge the legitimacy of those words from the White House. We'll have much more to discuss tomorrow. Lots of breaking news, as always. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. The Ben Shapiro Show is produced by Mathis Glover, executive producer Jeremy Boring, senior producer Jonathan Hay. Our technical producer is Austin Stevens, edited by Alex Zingaro. Audio is mixed by Mike.